Well, Doyle does not need introduction. Our presenter tonight is Doyle McConnell.
Well, I'm not even ready to go here yet.
Oh boy. Don't drop it. Don't let the wind blow over.
I was out in Provo, Utah about 3 years ago, I guess it was. Maybe it was 4. And I saw one of these things. And it was very pleasing to my eye. I mean, I just really did like the looks of the thing. And a lot of other people do too. And there's sort of a reason for that, which I'll explain a little bit further here in a minute. But I want to give the credit to the people that credit due, in that the designer, I suppose he was the designer, he's the one that had one out there that I saw, was Ron Gerton. And he does a lot of collaborative work with Lyle Jameson, Lyle Jameson is the fellow that designed that tool that Chuck had, the frame part of it. And he does a lot of hollow turning. And this fellow, Ron, he does apparently a lot of bronze castings and things, and they do work together. So. And the name, it got named Fibonacci by Karen Kurz. And I sort of learned about Fibonacci through her. And he was a mathematician that came up with I lost my mind. He came up with the decimal system, pi, 3.1416, and the Fibonacci series of numbers that are built around nature, and that is the Fibonacci series. There's a mathematical formula that will drive that thing, and then you connect the dots and you come up with that shape. That shape is prevalent in a lot of flowers, pine cones. If you look at it, you can see it in the pine cones, and then of course in the nautilus shell. So Fibonacci came up with a lot of numbers to match up what is pleasing to the eye. I think that's the reason why this thing is so soothing and pleasing to the eye, is the fact that it is a natural series. This so I decided I've built a couple of these before, and I decided to build this out of some of Tom Gillard's Baltic birch plywood. And a lot of you saw the mold that I had here before I ever cut it up. It was a larger version of this. And that's the shape that you start with. And so I decided to do the segmented one this time on this one. And it has its pluses in the fact that you don't have to do all that deep hollow turning up in the inside, which it gets to be pretty difficult when you get to trying to get a shape like that, even with the tool like Chuck's got there. So each of them has their own advantages. And then one of the reasons why I decided to make it out of a segmented turning was that I had gone to Lloyd's seminar, which has been mentioned here earlier, that we did about a year ago on making segmented bowls. And I had never done one, so I made my segmented bowl out of this using Lloyd's system. And let me see if I can catch up where I'm at here, because I can't see up there now. I started out with a sketch, just a rough sketch of what I wanted to do, and then I drew the segments in, typically of the process that Lloyd used to make the segment bowls. Then I used his spreadsheet form that he developed, drawn up, and built up, that works real well. It works well for making segmented bowls. Now I've got a program that I bought that will do one segment at a time, but you can put in all of them on this one and it just calculates it right down through there, how long your board needs to be and all that stuff. So that's a great piece of stuff right there that Lloyd come up with. This is what the wood looked like to start with when I sawed it up in the required widths and strips. Then I used my Osborne miter gauge to do the sawing, saw it up into the section. Then you saw one of these here a minute ago that you put the pieces together and glue them up. So that's the glue process that you go through. Of course, the bigger ones are a little different. Then we get to that's the segment after it's been glued together and sanded. That's one of the layers of it. Then I use my drum sander to sand them flat instead of using a metal lathe. I don't have one of those. See, we have all these different ways to get to things. You need about everything you can ever lay your hands on and get all this stuff glued together without any seams in it. And all kind of different iterations there to get the thing glued up. Then sometimes you just have to resort to plain old natural forces. After we got it, it was glued up into two halves. And then those two halves were put together with carpet tape. And you'll see why in a minute, why they were put together with the carpet tape. Excuse me just a minute. As we've shown through the previous slides is how we got to this point. But now what we've done, we've put the laminations together with double-faced tape so that we can later get back into the inside to finish the wall thickness. And before I laminated it, or before I glued it together with the tape, I put it in the chuck and trued up a surface here for me to hold on the outside. So this time we're going to put it in lathe and form the outside of this part. Put it together with carpet tape so we can go into the inside and redo make the wall thickness after we get the form on the outside. Haven't turned much of this plywood like this, so don't know exactly what it's going to do or how it's going to act. Take a look at it here to see sort of what's happening. I've got the layout here of that shape that I generated, and with this lamination the way it is, it's sort of hard to get an idea about what it's supposed to look like. So maybe this will help, I don't know. We'll try to get that shape on there.
as we're finding out, this glue in this plywood is pretty hard on these lathe tools, as Chuck has found out it's pretty hard on his joiner blades. So we'll have to keep the tools good and sharp in order to keep it from tearing out on us. It's showing up in the laminations of the plywood here that they appear to be different levels, and it's apparently I either reverse the plywood layers, or I had one a little higher than the other when I sanded it, and I didn't have much discrepancy when I glued it together on the height. So apparently there may be a little difference in the plywood from if I put one piece in this way as opposed to the other way. So, but it is showing up pretty good there. It's going to look pretty good. It's pretty good looking design coming out. Now, if you notice, we turned this tenon round, concentric with the opening here on this end, while we had it turned that way. That gives me something to hold on here while I'm generating this other shape on this other side of the shape. And thank goodness for good chucks. It just really makes it wood turning easy. When I turned it around, see, I have a large hole in this end, so and I feel with this double back tape in here, I feel a lot better with a little bit of something to hold it up against the chuck. So I've got just a little block here that I'm going to put on there, and just to keep it pushed together. And as I do that, I notice that flexes quite a bit. So it's moving in and out this way. So that's something we'll have to really keep into consideration as we start generating our shape there. I believe we got it within sanding range there now. Hey, that's looking pretty good. I use a soft backed sanding pad, 5-inch, and I get the same size pads that I use on my orbital sander, and it works out pretty good. This is the ugly part of wood turning. Well, that didn't take long. So that was 180 grit paper. I'll be sanding it again after I put it back together. So at this point, I've got to mark it so that I'll know where to put it back together when I do the inside. I want to make sure that I put some marks on it that won't get lost. And now the fun part is going to be getting it apart. I have marked it so that when I take it apart, I'll be able to put it back in the same position it's in. And just a few minutes ago, I stopped it and realigned it because this surface had taken on some wobble, which was causing this surface to look different. So I readjusted it just for that purpose. So now we've got our shape, and if I can find the crack, we'll see if we can get the tape apart. Now, we're leaving it in the lathe so that we won't have to do the alignment thing that we have to do on putting this piece back in. So that's the purpose of not taking it out of the lathe. And as you see, that double back tape did a pretty good job. Now we've got to contour the inside to a wall thickness that we want to maintain all the way down. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to take these tools and sharpen again so they'll have a fresh start. What I did there was I took a parting tool and just made me a starting spot so I wouldn't have a catch out on that surface there, because that's got to go back together with the other one. Okay, now so I've marked my thickness that I want to keep my wall around. I'm going to have to sharpen my tool again. I'd like to get a little bit more of that right out of that radius in there, but it's so difficult. I'm as thin as it's getting. I'm afraid to make much more of an effort at it, so I'm going to just leave it like it is. Do a little sanding on it, and then be ready to glue back, do the other half, and then turn it, put it back together, and glue it together. Now that we've got both the inside and the outside surfaces finished to approximately the same thickness, and I've got the witness mark that we've put on it before, we're ready to start gluing it together. And all the other parts have been put together with Type Bond 2 glue, which is what we use on this. And hopefully we can just use the lathe for pressure. If we have to use some other clamping thing, we'll just have to work that out as we go. It's been surprising to me how easily that this plywood has turned. I expected a lot more tear out and jerking and pulling of parts of it coming out, but it's done very well. This is the Baltic birch plywood that Tom Gillard so graciously lets us get from him. And now, what glue squeezes out on the inside of this thing, I'll have to clean up whenever I saw it apart in the final stages of this thing. So hopefully I don't get too much in there. I think we don't appreciate enough the kinds of glues that we have to our access in this time of life. The older carpenters and cabinet builders had to use hide glue, which is not as good a glue as what we've got now. Of course, some of you I know may or may have not tried gluing a piece together and then breaking it, and generally it'll break somewhere other than the glue joint. There's our witness mark right there. Now, if everything works right, we should be able to put this back in this center. Well, I'm just pleasantly pleased. That didn't take any effort at all. Well, in the famous words of Norm Abram, we'll let that and cook till tomorrow. And we decided at this point that it might be a good time to talk about sharpening of lathe tools. Of course, this is a bowl gouge in 1/2 inch, which is measured from flute to flute, and I have another one here that is a 5/8, measured 1/2 inch diameter. It's 5/8 across the flutes, or 1/2 inch across the flutes, 5/8 diameter. I got it right. But for those that have never used one of these Wolverine jigs and the little grinder attachment, it's to me it's a very difficult job to grind a tool and not have several different facets on the cutting edge, which if you've got a facet that is of a different angle, your tool has to change to make that facet work properly. So this little tool right here has been a lifesaver for me, and it's once set up, it's very simple to use. You get your tools ground, you maintain these angles on this, you maintain the distance on here. I've got a little scribe line right there. I can set it right back to where it goes. You got a stop block here that you set your tool the given distance out from here, and it's just a simple matter when you go to touch up a tool of generally just making one round around it. You can look at it and see if you hit it all the way around, you're through. That's all there is to grinding that tool. I keep all my tools set on the same angle, and for that reason I can sharpen all of this right back with no effort at all. And for those that have bought lathe tools, you know how expensive they are, and I bet we didn't take 4,000 or 5,000 thousandths off the end of that thing to sharpen. We got into doing the turning, and of course that's pretty basic, but you know a lot of people hadn't seen turning, so we thought we'd throw that in. Now, I use my computer a lot. I've got a little CAD system on it,
that I used to lay these lines out with on my CAD system. That's a picture of it on the computer there. And it printed out 4 pages, and I just glued those pages onto a template. And then I've got this sort of set up here for demonstration purpose, but the template fits on there like so. You got to have a base on it. This will all be covered here in the next segment of this slide. So that's my template there, and it's where I'm gluing it together. There's the thing on top, and then I glued the bottom to it, and the top to it, and then we'll start sawing it apart here.
Last night we finished up some of the projects, and I've glued a base to this with hot glue. No, I didn't use hot glue. I used just regular glue to glue this base to the thing. And because there's a lot of pressure on it when you're sawing, I have hot glued the top template to the top of it, using little wedges down in this area here, if you can see them, to give this a little stability to keep it from vibrating. I have set the center of rotation, which is this point right here, off 1 inch in order to make a larger radius down here at this end, so we won't have to cut such a small radius on the beginning cuts. We're about ready to get started cutting now. We have the saw set up with a 3/8 inch wide blade with 14 teeth pitch. Now the reason for that being they're using a wider blade is I find that after I get down into the larger arcs I can have a little more control over it, and the 14 pitch tooth is not the best for sawing wood, but it gives you a lot better finish. We're ready to get started. What I'm doing here now is checking for the first cut. I don't want to take just a real thin piece, so I may have to move 2 steps to get the first cut. But it looks like I'm going to come out just right with this one. Now here's our first little piece that we've got off of it. Now we've got to keep these things, not lose any of them, and keep them in order. So. now you can begin to see what's happening to our bowl. We're taking out these sections out of it, and as you can see, we've got several sections to cut. So we'll cut down to the center, leaving about a 1/2 inch, and then we'll turn around and start cutting from this side so that we'll have some kind of the base remaining. Otherwise, we'll cut off our base and we won't have anything to hold it up. I'm going to put a little more glue right in this area here because I certainly don't want that template coming off of here at this stage of the game. It'll be a catastrophe. All right, now we've got to halfway, and the reason why I'm going to start cutting on the other side now, you see, if I keep going this way, I've cut the foot off of the bowl, and if we lose that sitting on that foot, then we don't have anything to ride the rest of it on. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it around and start cutting from this side of the bowl. You'll notice it's getting real flexible right here. So what I'm doing is putting in some braces along as I go to hold it up while we're cutting on it. And I'm just putting them in there with hot glue, and then I can saw right through them. Well, as you can see, I had a major catastrophe on the sawing. Apparently, trying to analyze what happened, this piece here didn't have enough support under it. It started vibrating. When it hit this, it vibrated, and also I didn't have enough support under the bottom because I'd sawed it away, and it just sort of disintegrated. So we were lucky enough to be able to find all the parts, and we've done a little different kind of a reinforcement under here, reinforcing that, little reinforcement in here all the way across. Hopefully it'll stay together till we can get it sawed this time. I lost my support right there. Well, we've got it cut down to this point. We've got one piece left on here, as you can see. The next process will be to clean up all of the fuzz off of them and begin to start gluing them back together, which is a unique process in itself. Well, this is it, cut up into all the pieces. Now the major task of deburring and beginning the glue job back. I guess it's time to get started doing really the tough part about this thing is the deburring and the gluing together of them. I use the Dremel with a little drum sander on it to deburr it with, and I just do the deburring on the inside. And it's not difficult, but it just takes a lot of time. I find that little Dremel tool to be awful handy in a lot of the things I do here in the shop anymore. Now we've got to determine which side of this we want to do. And I've got a little gauge that I made to set each one of them so that they will all extend the same amount. And I try to get them lined up as best I can, and then draw me a little line on it so that I know where to put the glue. It's sort of hard to get the glue in the right places without you do this. All right, now I've got it marked for the glue, and what I'm doing is using just regular glue and a little super glue mixed in with it, and I put a little, try to not get enough on it to where it'll squeeze out. It just don't take much to hold it together, but I just sort of put a little around in the areas that are inside the marked places. Now I've got that much on that one, and then I'll get it on this one where I marked it on the underside. It don't take a lot of glue. As you well know, you get a drop of glue in the right place, it does pretty good. And it does real well if you put it in the wrong place. Now I go back to my lines that I had drawn on there. And I started sort of down in the middle. If you'll notice there's a place missing here. It's sort of hard to get the thing lined up properly when you first start off. So I've started this time down, sort of down in the middle, so that I can keep it lined up and keep it straight. Now I've tried several different ways of clamping this thing, and it's really not a good way. Sometimes I can get them to hold okay, and sometimes they don't. So I've got to see. Now that one won't work with that heavy clamp. So I've got a little clothespin here that I cut up. Maybe it'll work. Try to get that part. Now I go around here on this side, and I find that the best thing I can do on that is put some super glue on it. If I can get it to hold, to sit up. I'm having a little trouble with my glue setting up. That's the slickest way to do it if you can get it to do it. I ordered some different of this. It was a little squirt kind, which you could really concentrate where you put it. This sort of covers a broad area, and if we can get that set up there, well, that'll help us clamp it on that end. And that's about the best system that I've found yet. Which means you've got to hold it a little while till it decides to set up. And I will probably go and deburr 4 or 5 of them. I'm reluctant to get too far and get them out of order so much, because get them out of order, it's sort of hard to find out where to put them back. Well, I've progressed a little bit here. I've found out that I can use the hot glue as part of the clamping system, so it's working out a little better for me. That means we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pieces glued up. guess I thought it might be a time to talk to you a little bit. We've got this far along, and I just got through picking up all of these parts here. All of these pieces I had just knocked off in the floor. So I guess the thing to do is be sure you don't have that stuff where it can get knocked off. You're working on it. The pieces have got sort of flimsy. This is where the opening is in the top of the piece, so it's got to be sort of a hard deal to handle. And I've sort of changed my process a little bit, in that I'm using my little nailer to help nail the pieces down. So I think I'll just go through one of the processes here for you. And I put the glue on. I've also, during the process, I've squeezed these in a little bit, and I've got my bowl just a little bit out of shape, so I'm trying to correct that as I go to get it back into a more natural state. There's a lot of things that comes into play on this thing as you're putting it together. And I guess the only way that you could really understand what I'm talking about is if you do one of them yourself. And so far, the best process that I've found is to put this one on there, and with whatever means that you can, get it sort of positioned on there and get it in the right place. And I found that I could get one little clamp right there, and I can get a little clothespin that's been modified just a little bit right in that position there, and use the hot glue gun to establish that point right there. And then you got to decide where you want this as you go down through there, with that piece being, like I say, I've had it sort of drawn in. And this little pin nailer has proved to be very helpful in this process, in that I can take this and, would you believe you can nail with this little old flimsy stuff? This gluing of this thing's been a pretty good job because of the plywood. The others I've done has been have been just regular wood, and it bends a little easier than this plywood does. Now I've got a place right here that there's not enough ledge to nail to, so after I get all that fixed, I go in here and put a little hot glue in this part. The hot glue seems to be working pretty good compared to the before. I've used the super glue. But hot glue seems to be doing as well, and you don't see it. It's in there covered up to where you can't see it. And I'm just using it as a sort of a clamping mechanism till my regular glue gets dry. Can you believe that you can drive a nail down through that? About 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch thick piece there. That's almost spectacular, isn't it? But it sure does ease the clamping process on this while you're putting this thing together. Regular glue down through the major portion of it. And then I use hot glue down in this end because I can't get I use super glue down in this end because I can't get the hot glue gun down in the hole there. Took a while to tell that story, but you got to do it to tell it. But in conclusion, it's a time-consuming project, but it's very rewarding. You get to use just about all the processes of the woodworking shop. You got anything that you do to increase your skills is part of it. Now, I was just talking about some of the things that come in here, the people were brought in. Over the last 10 or 12 years, you've seen people start making stuff, and you see how they've grown and how much improvements they've made on their stuff, and it's just really rewarding to see that kind of thing go on. This club is just really great, I think, for that kind of stuff. But if anybody's wanting to try one of these things, you can have my film, you can have whatever you want. It does take a long time, but it's fun.
I have a question. The sawing template that you made, you drew on the computer, did you start with like at one edge and just increase the radius as you went across?
It was, I drew a circle the size of my vessel.
Okay.
And then I start over here with a 1/4 inch circle.
Okay.
I think it's about a 1/4 inch. And then I stepped off a 1/4 inch.
Every 1/4 inch you increase the radius.
Every 1/4 inch. And you can do a parallel line on that thing. So all you got to do is just snap on each line and it'll just throw it in there. So it didn't take any time at all to make that template with the computer. I mean, you can do it with a compass, lay it out, draw it out, at the same time.
Doyle, how much total time you got this now?
How many hours you got on them tapes, Lloyd?
What's the film and
He had 6 different shirts.
at least a week.
Well, it took 4 tapes. How much is on one of them tapes, Lloyd?
An hour.
So I guess it took probably 6 or 8 hours. Maybe a little more than that, because it takes a long time to put that thing together. But that's one of those things where you do a little bit,
and then you walk off from it, maybe demur them at more while it sort of sits up. But the gluing problem that I had was the glue wouldn't set. Chuck said he had a problem with his after it got old. I got a new bottle of glue and it just instant, set up. It was a combination of super glue and regular glue. They weren't mixed, as y'all could see there. At one time in there, it sounded like when I said to use a combination of super glue and regular glue. It's not mixed together. You have a question?
How did you get all that dried glue off of there?
You don't let it get on it. You saw I was very careful about where I put it. I drew those lines, and I stayed inside those lines with just a little bit of glue so that it wouldn't squeeze out.
So
what
when
little
you
bit?
pressed them together, it didn't come out.
Now, what little bit did come out, you saw me a time or two that I was taking a thumbnail and run down through there and clean it off, and then you got to clean your thumbnail out. Any other questions? Folks, I thank you for your indulgence.